Hello, all, and welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is episode 177 for January 10, 2025. And I've entitled it Resolutions. I don't know whether that means we're going to resolve things or whether we're going to promise to resolve things, but that's what we're calling it today. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App. This is an event that we do on Fridays, every Friday, or at least most Fridays, except around the holidays. We get together to talk about Plant and App and the things that you're working on and the challenges that we all experience. So do hope if you're watching this on recording that you'll come join us live sometime. This is open to everybody, all skill levels. We do record them, put them on YouTube. So at youtube.com/plantandapp, you can get all the past episodes. And I was answering a support question earlier today. I referred back, searched through the prior episodes and found the answer. Unsurprisingly provided by Ben. And so I'm going to cover it again today because, well, it'll help out whoever's this person on support is. We are pretty informal. We do say hello. We go around the campfire, and the main thing, whoop, I didn't update the map here. Um, that was last time. We always do first call, and that is whatever it is that you want to talk about. And then we'll talk about contributions to Campfire websites and other things. And then after an hour or so, we go into Afterglow segment. That's where we turn off the recording, hang out, explain what our resolutions really are, and enjoy each other for a few more minutes. So do jump in and engage with us. You can submit questions and topics in advance, either by emailing me at support@plantandapp.com or through this QR code. You can fill in the form, and anything that gets submitted in advance, we push to the top for the list for the next week. Ah, 2 minutes. I haven't lost my touch. Good morning, all. Happy New
Good
Year.
morning, Dale.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Good
Good morning.
Dale.
Morning. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to all of you.
Well, welcome back. Anybody have something they want to talk about first?
Dale, are you getting snow?
Sadly, no. We're right on the line. So we've got a little bit of sleet in a few spots, but mostly it just rained all day yesterday. My compatriots just a few miles to the north are building snowmen.
I got you. We got a whiteout here right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, it looks like yeah, I know you're on the beach, but not really.
We're living in the land of fire and ice, it appears. My
Yes.
son is in LA, so I'm watching those fires very closely.
Uh, the
Terrible.
Romanian team asked me today if I knew anybody, and I do not that I'm aware of. So that's the first. So far, his place is okay.
Yes, yes. There's ash all over the place, so plenty of ash falling around. But he's about 30 miles away
Hmm.
from the nearest. The Eaton fires is the closest one to him.
Yep. Absolutely crazy. All right. Anything low coding or coding or otherwise, I'm going to go into a prepared topic or two. Right. Here we go. Um, over these, we haven't gotten together in several weeks, and these numbers barely moved. As a matter of fact, nobody shifted from a lower version of Plant and App to the current 1.26. We had a couple of new 126s start out, so I would assume that means maybe a new client or two, a new system or two. But um, yeah, I encourage you guys to move on up. 126 has been out for a long time. Well, let's see, since June, and it is a good and stable release. One thing I would encourage, though, that once you migrate to 126, or at the time that you do, that you apply all the hot fixes. There are a lot of good and important hot fixes, and once you've gone to the effort of planning an upgrade and getting a backup and some downtime, that after you install the 126, install all the hot fixes, and that's the path that's going to likely make you happiest. Come on in, the water's fine. Patrick, what do you think? Throwing him under the bus.
About upgrading to 126.
Do you stand behind 126 as a good and
Yes.
solid list?
Yeah, absolutely.
You heard from somebody trustworthy now. All right. Oh, and this, yeah, October blue. That was where I started doing some comparison and versus current. So, yep. All right. Anybody want to comment on why they, assuming anybody on here is holding out, any particular things that's holding you back that we should be aware of and address? You just hate to
I'm
upgrade
just
on.
waiting on Jerry to rewrite his validator so that we can do the upgrades.
Oh yeah, custom validators was part of the what was that, 125 or so?
Yeah, we're on the production, we're at 117, so we've got to get those, excuse me, updated before we can upgrade.
Yep. All right.
Dale, did you say that 126 has been out for a year? Is that right?
No, since
Yeah.
June of 24.
Since June 24. But it's the only version that's within the 1 year of support window?
It is.
Seems like time goes by so fast that we need to have everything
Yes.
up to 1.26.
There was there have been times when we've released versions too fast, and we certainly heard from the community about that, doing it too often and can't keep up. And then the 126, it was between 125 126, there was a pretty significant time gap, and that's why we're seeing that's worth looking at here in our knowing where things are in our documentation. The compatibility guide shows where we are. So 125 came out November 20 in 23, and then we what was that, a 7 month gap before we came out to 126, and now we're looking at well, it's going to be a 7 month gap again. So with that and a policy where we say we're going to support things for at least a year, that's how we arrive at 126 being the only one within the support window. We don't ever turn away. I won't say we won't ever, but it's not like we turn away your support things. But when things come up and we've already addressed them in a later version, then we get into the case. Well, yeah, you're on 124. We fixed that already. Please upgrade. So anyway. And as long as we're looking at this list, probably the biggest node, I've mentioned it before, but up to 126, SQL Server 2012 was our minimum, and that gets raised to, I believe, 2016 or 2017, just to try and stay. This is already out of date. I think Microsoft goes 10 years, so that version is moving once we get to 127 as well. And while we're mentioning 127, the hope is that we'll have that out at least for a beta later this month. I don't know about you guys, the holidays took a toll for us. There hasn't been a lot moving on between developers. Well, all the different resources that were out and celebrating and taking some vacation time. The progress is not as much as we'd had in prior months. Does that impact anyone else?
No, I'm glad you said that because that's my feeling too. I just had too many other things to do to devote a big chunk of time to do a backup, a copy of the site, run everything, make sure it's okay, then do it again on the main. That's a big chunk of
Hmm.
time, and just couldn't find that big chunk of time among all of the other activities during the year.
Yep.
Yeah,
All
same
right.
here.
Moving on. Low Code Cafe rather, this week, 2 days ago, was on reusing modules. And I think I know there was at least one question thrown at me. If I don't know if you want to address it here, but we at least showed a technique for being able to reuse modules. Wondering if you do that, if you had any questions about um, the cafe itself. One of
So,
the concerns.
so Dale, I would add right away that the thought had never occurred to me to reuse or put those modules on multiple pages, the ones that Plant and App already creates for you. So
Mhm.
that concept was new and it's a welcome concept. I like the idea. That seems useful.
Well, it as with many topics, we talk about the things internally that we haven't presented before, and maybe things that we do, like on our delivery team, and then I get to uh, package it down into steps that. The point is, it's not my idea, it's not my brilliance, it's other people's brilliance, but I just try to make it understandable. But it was useful. There was a one of the questions, the technique that I showed off had to do with when we made copies of a form that the trying to use the same form that we generate in entities to do other purposes. And in the case that I had, it was we're trying to use it as an entry form to submit a new something. And so we didn't want the end users to have access to all the fields. And so I was hiding them by way of CSS, which was rightly pointed out wasn't particularly secure. I acknowledged that during the cafe, but I did that they were still visible in the CSS, but I didn't point out it was probably as could be considered a security vulnerability, so worth mentioning. Um, and then it just brings up when a form or a listing is trying to be all things to all people. If you're using it 2 times or 3 times, and you have different code in there to make it support different uses, it just gets more complex to work with and maintain. So that's the cost of being able to reuse it is um, does it work right in all the different contexts, and do you count for all the different contexts? So those were the big points, the big takeaways. Uh, anyway,
That's a consideration almost all the time. So that's forefront in your thought process when you're building stuff.
yep.
Yeah, Mark, I think I heard Mark saying that that you used the forms and the lists that are built by the entity builder, and you used that part of it. I've always been the opposite. When I build an entity, it's because I ultimately want to create a form for somebody to enter in data, and so I build the entity first, I get the thing, and then I always copy it onto another page because the customer always wants it on their theme and not on the page builder theme. So I need to copy it, and I always thought that's just what you've got to do. But the this last concept, Dale, that you just said, uh, the idea of using it multiple times, I think I'm missing something. What I would do is I would copy it, uh, but then I would treat it as a completely new form because I've made some changes to it somehow or other, and I wouldn't think to say I could use this here, 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 and here. I would always think that I just have to maintain multiple copies now. So what part of all of that did I miss?
Well, so the 45 minutes of, I mean, it'd probably be worth taking a look at it. At a high level, I can try to.
Oh yeah, that's all. I'll go back and watch the cafe. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but just in the 10,000 foot, is that the case that you can reuse a particular module and do something to make it
Yeah,
unique on a page, but always just one module to update and maintain?
yes.
Got it. Okay, that's
And
cool.
I assume as since you're, I mean, what we're doing, of course, is taking advantage of the DNN functionality, and I'm trying to get to it here. The make a copy, or rather, place an existing module that's not a copy.
Right.
Um, and the system is running so slowly today. Um, and so the at the highest level, what we did is to say, okay, we have a listing or a form that was generated a result of the entity builder that we made a copy. We used the um, existing module. This one, add existing module, pick it, but with this make a copy unchecked. So then once it's placed, and you've got it is at that point, it's another instance of the exact same module. So now how do you customize it so that it can be reused? Um, it has to uh, meet the need. I mean, sometimes you don't need any customization. You could just have the listing appear on your maintenance pages and your forward facing pages, and they'd be exactly the same. Maybe you make some differences. In our case, I hid columns for the public page, and changed what fields were available to input on the form. So, um,
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that you always have to change add a load user into the new form because you just put it on a public facing page and you have to store that entity, and that user doesn't have permission to do so. So I would have to jump in
well,
and add
it,
that load user to it.
yeah, in your, if sounds to me like in your case, you're talking about a public page where where user is not logged in, and yes, you
Right.
could do that. For example, that when you get into a save, you could say, well, if there is no user, then do a load user. And so if it's a user that's logged in, it's going to do it under their own context. If it's a user that is not, if there is no user logged in, then you could do it under a common context.
Hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, that makes sense.
A little if then logic could apply. Um, in my case, you'll see if you watch that video, you'll see that I did different things on different pages. So I was using tab name to say if it's the customer facing page that's named, and what was it? Ratings. If it's the ratings page, then I'm going to do one thing. If it's anywhere else, I'm going to do another thing. So, and you could use tab name, or tab ID, or you could differentiate by user ID or user role, or whatever your differentiating factor is. Um, but
So
yeah, so
Don,
the go ahead.
I'll just add in reinforcement of what you were thinking, I think, Don. So I've been doing it the same way that you have, where I copy those items and then I customize my version to my needs, my users' needs. And for me, Dale introduced the concept that, hey, you might have some benefit from reusing the same form and the same listing in multiple places. So for me, that was an introduction of the concept. For me also, I would think that's not going to work for me all the time. But now we have that possibility in the times that it would work well.
Mhm.
And Dell made it easier to customize for the use of the page that is being put on. it's a good thing to watch.
Hmm.
It's
The
I think there's a balance you have to find is it because the more you try to reuse it for something more and more custom, the more conditional logic you have to put in, and then it might get too burdensome. So you kind of have to find the balance. Is it a good scenario for using a synced copy of the module, or would I be better off just making a fresh copy of it and doing all my customizations? And you have to find that balance.
Hmm.
I also demoed some of this in Cafe 173 as well. Um, and that cafe was about versioning records in entities. But I did some synced modules as well for displaying the versioned records.
I think it is good for to try and just to see consider another technique and whether or not it works for you. Um, I guarantee that um, my default position up until now has been to start from scratch. I'm not even copying the module that we generate, but rather just starting with an empty um, listing or an empty form and doing it myself because I feel so comfortable in controlling everything, right? It's a control issue. Um, and then just realizing that if the entity changes, I've got to come back in and account for that change in my form, or else it's broken, or maybe not taking advantage of the new fields we've added, things like that. So there's like the three extremes using starting from absolute scratch, copying something that's there, but having it be a copy that is distinct, and then there's make a copy that make a place an existing that's not a copy, it's a duplicate. I don't know. I struggle over the terminology a little bit, but synced or whatever. But yeah, um, and
Yeah, synced is not really a good. I know that's what I said, but I don't think it's a really good description either because it's not synced. It's the same module.
same
It's just yeah.
same thing in a different place.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly. It's the same has the same module ID. It's just got a different tab module ID because it's on a different tab, but it's the same module ID.
One of the one of the things as I was thinking about it, that where I would think it could be most helpful is if you're using an action stack that if you've got a button that's got something pretty complex that you click the button and it does a lot of steps, does a lot of predetermined logic, and then you make a copy of that form, and now you've got two different forms that have the exact same logic, and now you've got two places to maintain that logic using the identical module and the logics being then behind the button being identical. It would be a good excuse for good, something on the positive side for using that technique. Anyway, lots of pros and cons were covered towards the end of the episode, and you can jump to those as well. So, um, yeah, hopefully that'll be useful to somebody sometime. Um, since we're now less than a month away from DNN Summit, I wanted to mention that. Of course, there's the ability to attend in person or virtually, and so I hope to see you or see you at on the virtual side. I think somehow we're going to as a presenter and an attender, we're hopefully straddle all that so we can interact with you however you come. But my presentation is taking shape, and I think I've got some things that um, many of you will be able to use. So hopefully you'll see it at Summit. We'll cover some of that stuff after Summit as well too, more from a plant and app perspective. My Summit presentation is really just going to focus on DNN. But that's a teaser. You got to come.
Hmm.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Dale. I hope everybody can come. We look forward to seeing you. Dale, it'll be the first time for me to see you in person. I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? I'll be there.
All right.
No,
So, question?
no.
Okay. There was a question today on support, and I knew there was an answer someplace, and I found that it was something that Ben had done, and maybe has done more than one time. Because when I listened to it was a campfire video, and Patrick said, "Oh, the technique I use for this is exactly the same as what you do, so I must have gotten it from you." So, but I'm now going to cover it again so that I can push it to. I'm finally putting it out on Campfire. I couldn't find it out on the Campfire website, so um, I'll hit this. Um, so the idea was that you want to conditionally put a background on a row, and how do you do that? And um, so again, none of this is my original idea. This is all Ben, and I'm just putting it into a place here where people can find and copy and paste and use it. But the technique is to have a field that doesn't have a column. It's a computed field that was added that has allow HTML put on it, and then some pretty straightforward JavaScript. So there's a div that is used to identify. There's a if statement to say, well, if whatever I'm testing about my row, in this case, I'm looking for all rows where the first name field is equal to Dale in uppercase. And if that's true, these statements here execute. This is just a debugging thing that could come out, but this is the core of the technique that been previously presented. A little JavaScript to say, go look for this uh, tag that's in this row, and then go and find the closest TR, which is the HTML symbol for the row in question, and then style the whole row with a color. So now, uh, Ben, did I give you a proper attribution or blame?
Yeah, I recognize my logic when I saw the code there. I was like, yeah, that's mine. Um, I've enhanced it since then, but that's generally the gist of it. The logic is still exactly the same. It's just a little. Ever since I upgraded to 125, I've been trying to clean up a lot of my logic. One of the things I realize is while this works, this creates a lot of scripts depending on how many rows you
Yes.
have. So it's redundantly, the redundancy of the same code over and over again. So what I ended up doing was I added a function in the init JavaScript of the grid. And then in here, I just call the JavaScript with some parameters. So the code itself is written once.
Yep.
And then what's written and called multiple times is the call to that function. It just makes it a little less wieldy on the page when you're looking at the code. It's not embedded the scripting over and over and over and over and over.
Very good point. When you get to JavaScript, and I've said many times, it's not my first language, so but it is a very good point that when you do a technique like this, that this particular stack of stuff is going to appear once for every row that's there. Just like, and speaking of unwieldy, um, there are I've done things before where, for example, you use a token to go look up some other piece of related information or compute based on fields. And using a token in a listing means that the token gets executed for as many times as the row appears. And so, depending on how heavy that is, that might slow down the whole thing. So, it's possible to do low code that's very efficient or very inefficient, and you just have to think about your impact. So in this case where we're doing 10 rows that being displayed, that not a huge deal. but depending on your use, could be a real big deal to be more efficient.
What is could you show the JavaScript again? You're basing that on the uh is that an index of what's the so hash user ID, user underscore user ID? That's
So
the
the div that I placed here,
oh yes, okay.
Yeah,
so
hashtag means the ID.
Right,
Search, the
right.
$sign is a jQuery for search for. Hashtag is an object ID of user underscore, and then the
So
user ID is dynamically put in.
something that I've done also is that since we have the option if you have buttons already in place, or you can even do it. I think you can hide a button to do this too, but buttons have a class, and so and you can tokenize that class. And so I've used that also, a tokenized class on a button to get the closest TR to that class. So you could base it on that as well. That's another possibility, and that's what I've done. That's the way I've implemented this. Just a thought. Yeah,
does,
and of course an item button. Yep.
I've done it that way too.
so we've added an arbitrary button. And so we have my item button. It's worth, since you've mentioned it, I think it's worth, well, me
Well,
looking.
you would have to specify your class. So
Ah,
you need to go back in and add a class. Yep. So call the class something like uh, my button hyphen and then tokenize one of the ID value from your exactly.
user ID is unique per row, so I'll use
Yeah,
that.
something that's
Uh,
unique per row. Yep. So that you have a unique class that you're accessing, and then you can get the closest TR from that class.
So now when I inspect it, like on row 5, for example, and I look at my button, um,
Yep, there it is right there.
my
My button
button
5.
5 class on it. So from a logic standpoint, um,
Taking JavaScript, instead of doing hashtag like you did, it would just be a period.
Yep.
That's the search for class.
Mhm.
and so just for fun, I'm going to just do this for scratch. This is going to be, just going to call it the button stuff. We'll allow HTML, and it's similar to this, right? So we still need a script, but we don't need the um, the div because that's what we're relying on instead, right? So
Mhm.
you're saying it'd be um,
No. Undo what you just did.
Yeah.
Put that back. Where it says $, change $user to period. My button, I think is what you said.
Yep.
oh yeah.
huh? And so this gets me to the row, but if you're good with CSS and JavaScript, you could style anything. We're styling the whole row, and I'm just going to do this as um, still uses the, let's see, this logic we can use that.
That
And
was a
this,
good color to use because it's white on white.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
let's see, yep.
Ben, you're so bright.
Um,
Mhm.
somebody, somebody give me a
Different,
call.
but no one can see.
Isn't that the way it goes?
Uh,
Fe is light gray.
well, we've got some other gray going on here.
Fefe.
Hmm?
Was that a personal comment?
I'll try it. Wait, where is it? Okay. It's I didn't get there yet, so just double check where would
You
the
could say silver. That's a named color.
um, so it is my button dash whatever.
Yeah, you'd have to go up to the TR of it.
So I just wanted to make sure I got that part of it right. It's still enclosed in quotes. It's still got the user ID, closes DR.
With this kind of
And
thing, I have to go and find my implementation. I can never remember exactly.
looking at the console, Ben is on row 4. Oh, it says unhappy about closest. Uh,
Do you need the index there?
No,
Ben, do you recall? Do we still need the index indicated there? I don't think
I
so,
don't
but
think so.
yeah,
Not sure. Probably not. I'm assuming that's
yeah.
probably why it's complaining about closest.
So, I know there's alternate syntaxes, but I would have used .css instead of .style. But
now it's complaining about background color. I'm sorry, your suggestion, Mark?
it's not going to solve the problem with the background color.
All right, thanks, Matt. See you.
Well, you've got the example. The other rows are being colored. Why don't you go grab that again? The Dale rows are still looking good.
I'm
Yeah,
still
that's
struggling with the dot versus hash, why you wouldn't continue using hash instead of dot.
It's because
Because
in jQuery they mean different things. Those are kind of like commands. Hashtag means search for an ID. A dot means search for a class name.
and we put a class name on the button.
Oh,
So
oh, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Does anybody have the brights to solve this, or shall I take it offline? Maybe maybe Patrick can find one of his implementations and
Yes, I'm
come.
scrounging for it right now.
last time I did this was probably a couple years ago. I'm not sure which project that would be on.
All right, I'll have a race. I'm going to ask my assistant.
You know, arguably, it would seem that a low-code environment would make that a little bit easier to highlight a row. I'm not sure how that would be
Yes.
implemented, but
We we've had this discussion and there's a open there's an open ticket in our DevOps system for doing just that.
hmm,
But it hasn't been grabbed yet and
there, that's the syntax I would use with CSS. But that I think that's just because I'm familiar with it.
Okay, my user.
That looks good.
I'm just curious why it would work
yeah, I was thinking the
with
same thing.
the
Yeah.
hashtag, but not with the dot.
Yeah.
Like it's still bringing back an element, so it should be the same exact.
I didn't notice. Did it put a hash in there?
No. I'm saying when it worked with a hash,
Oh, okay.
and then when we changed it to a dot, it stopped.
Well, it still didn't work.
Is this row background counter? Did you verify that the button actually has that class?
We should do that. But 2, 3, it's getting 4, which is the pen row, so that's good. The class of the button on this is
Button -4.
my
Nine
button
button.
4 with B as the only capital. And
Is it Ben in capital? Oh, you doing two uppercase. Never mind.
we're getting this is succeeding. We're getting
It's true.
console log of that. That's given me much difference. So, all right, I'll take this part of it offline. At least
It could be the timing. That last suggestion was about timing. Was the document ready yet? I'm not going to suggest we stay here and try to figure it out, but that looks
That
like a
you're probably
possibility.
right.
Dale,
Doing
you're
it this way,
using
they're
black background color as one word instead of putting a hyphen in it. Is that creating the problem? See in the AI code?
it uses it
Looks
with
like it matches.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks good.
would say the just the $ my button user ID to the end of that parenthesis, do a console log of just that and see if what you're
Hmm.
getting back is a nothing. If it's a
Yeah.
nothing, then like Mark said and pointed out what the thing said was that most
It's a
likely it's a
timing.
timing issue. This is running this code prior to the button actually being created. So it's not finding the button and therefore it won't find the parent row either.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'd done this before, but that
um this is the right syntax, no hyphens, no apostrophes rather.
Looks good.
So it's 2 and 4, and then
Length of 0, I think.
that's probably the clue that.
mm,
Okay.
I think that's it.
And all right.
In which
Well,
case, if you did a set timeout function around it for like even, 225 milliseconds, it probably would fix the issue because then it would give the button enough time to load.
So this is another small argument for moving this code to the init of the module.
mhm.
Well, believe it or
Gotcha.
not, I did move my code to the init portion, and I do have a timeout function because I've found at least
Mhm.
since I moved to version 1.2.5. In version 1.2.8, it worked perfectly fine. But when I moved my code straight as it was in 1.1.8 to 1.2.5, my coloring stopped. And it wasn't because there was anything wrong with it, it was the timing.
Mhm.
Certain things were not loading quick enough, or were loading too fast, I should say. Either way you look at it. So by me putting in the timeout, it gave that smidgen of a delay to let the browser catch up.
All right.
Just an additional thought. I'm pretty sure that when I did this with a button in the past, that I also used some CSS to actually hide the button because I didn't need the button, but what I needed was its class.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's what
that's
I've done. Yeah.
just an additional thought if you do this.
Yeah, I would just, again, just from a standpoint of efficiency, um, if you're not actually putting code behind the button, I would tend to suggest don't use that method because you are causing the browser to have to basically still go through the motions of creating a button and everything
Mm.
associated with it. And you're not actually even using it for anything. It's a lot faster to just create a div with an ID because that's a nothing for the browser.
Yep.
If you
Understood.
have an existing button that has code that goes behind it, then yeah, you can, if
Yeah,
you can get it
tack
to
it on.
use the button, and that way you don't have to create a div. So you're just reutilizing what's already there. And that makes sense. But you know, if the button has no code, I wouldn't suggest putting it on there just for that.
So the suggestion that, or the, the ticket that's in place in our DevOps system, what it would do is add a row styling that would be conditional. So you could put conditions on row styling, and you could also do conditional styling for specific um, column headers and specific cells within the table as well.
That sounds great.
Would be much appreciated. Now, is the styling something like if this condition, then this style, if this condition, then that style, or is it just one style?
No, yeah, I think the way I wrote it up, it should be I think you can do multiple conditions.
Okay, so since we can't completely solve that with the to show two methods, at least right at the moment, I'm going to move on to one more thing. Excuse me. Did anybody see this? Well, I'm sure some of you did this community post about a action form anti-spam honeypot. I had never heard of such a thing.
I've created one
I've
in the
heard of a
past.
honeypot, but I've never created.
Yeah, I've done it. Before I started using these products, I created one with dynamic forms.
Hmm.
It worked really well too, by the way, the honeypot concept.
So as I understand it, maybe you can correct me if I miss, but as I understand it, it's putting a field on a form that will be attractive to these spam bots that are filling in forms and
Mhm.
uh,
The, the,
that,
I Go ahead, Dale.
but
Sorry.
it's not actually visible to the user. So an end user won't fill it in. A honeypot or a spam bot hopefully will fill it in, and then the fact that there's content in the field is enough information to tell you to ignore the
Mhm.
content.
Mhm.
The only thing that I looked at this also, and the only thing that I wondered about is that I mean, couldn't you design a spam bot so that it ignores something that has display none as a style? I guess you could hide it in a class, I suppose, and get closer to maybe the trick,
Yes,
but
I would assume that you're right. Anything that if a browser has the ability to figure out whether or not to render it, a sophisticated spam bot would have a capacity to determine whether or not the thing is visible and stay away from it. So
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong though. If I remember correctly, there's an issue with using display none display none really doesn't render it,
Right.
whereas visibility
Invisible.
false makes
Mhm.
it's there but not visible. So if you do display none on any type of object, that object will never get to the browser. It will never render because it's being
Yeah,
completely ignored.
I think Ben's right. Yeah.
So display none does hide it, but it literally hides it by never allowing the browser to even see that that object is supposed to be there. So if you then need that object to be there, but in a hidden state, display none is not what you want to do. You want to do
Mhm.
visibility
Visibility.
as opposed to display.
Yes, but that's true. And Dale's point is also true that um, a bot could be smart enough to test for that style. I'd say the exercise of creating a honeypot in this way is it seems like a good idea, but a smarter bot's going to be able to outthink this. A dumber bot will get caught.
I'm pretty sure that display none. I thought that it did show up. But
Well, I thought it did too, which is why I'm looking around here. There it is. The browser knows that it's there.
mhm.
So true. You see it here.
Because also display none is used, to hide the content of a modal or something like that until
Until
you call it. Yeah.
It's
you
weird
can
because
change.
I know I've had that issue in the past where when I did display none, it removed it when it went to um,
Well, it doesn't occupy space
render.
anymore, whereas visibility, it still occupies space. Like there's still space reserved for it in the visible part of your
Mm.
browser. Whereas display none, it removes it off the visible part of the screen altogether. Like if you say visibility false, then you can still see there's a little bit of space being reserved for that thing.
So, yeah, display none, visibility hidden, but occupies the space. Opacity off screen.
Looks like exactly what you said, Mark, was true. Display none doesn't hold space, whereas visibility does. So I stand corrected. Forget what
Me
I said.
too. I thought you were right there, but this is a good reminder.
Well, interesting. Lots of. So you might the fact that there are different methods. Well, I don't know. I'm still back to yes, the browser could be smart enough. Excuse me, the spam bot could be smart enough. But if you filter out, it might be one of those circumstances that if you filter out 95% of them without any effort at all, and that it's worth doing, and then if you employ multiple methods, that might also be of value. Okay.
Sorry I didn't chime in on that the community post. I was traveling the other day and I wasn't
But
able to do that.
um, so you can tell, of course, that I asked AI to helped me solve that one, and then I just added a brief comment about how that applies to plant an app. So it was a pretty straightforward way to answer. Um, I don't mean to be lazy, but Bogdan does expect me to get other things done too. So whatever the fastest method is to answer the question.
That's what
Um,
AI is about, doing it faster, smarter.
um, I was going to mention a ghost story. Not that this, I haven't nailed it down yet, but wondered if anybody else has experienced it. I was working on a form and I was trying to set a cookie and also display a toast message. And I think I've encountered that maybe you can't do all of those things. You might be able to do a set a cookie, which involves a back and forth with the browser in order to set a cookie. And then Toast is also a browser interaction. Anyway, I was seeing one but not the other. Wondered if anybody had experienced anything like that. Planning to write up a test for it and be certain about it. But there may be certain combinations of things that while one will work, we can't do everything. Didn't know. All right, I'm going to do it as a challenge then. Maybe I'll have an answer next week.
Does it matter which, if you do a toast and continue message and then a toast and continue and then show the and then set the cookie, is that
The
still?
so I was trying to actually get something done. So I my what I was trying was setting the cookie and then toast and continue after it. And when it didn't work, I was more focused on
Oh yeah.
accomplishing the objective rather than um, debugging and finding what the characteristic of the bug was. So I will exactly try that. I'm probably going to set up a test that sets a cookie and displays a toast and sets a cookie and displays a toast and make those all conditional so I can find the pattern of what will work and what won't work.
One additional thought I have here is the execute asynchronously. You could separate one of those tasks out asynchronous.
Um, Unfortunately, well, not I don't think you can in this case because both of those things involve talking to the browser of the user that's going on. So if you execute asynchronous on setting a cookie, it's going to do something, but it's not operating on the browser of the person that's there. So I don't think the cookie will get set. A session might get set, or there might be other things that you can set, but a cookie is a browser specific thing, and likewise, a toast message is browser specific. So if you asynced them, it's happening in some other process that isn't connected to the browser, unless I'm thinking about that wrong. Other things you could do that way, I suppose. But and then this kind of thing came up a little bit. Patrick, recently you were working on what is it, passkey, and we kind of came to the conclusion there's certain things that we can and can't do because passkey is interacting with the browser, and there were limitations on.
Yeah, that specifically has to do with it that that the entire functionality is being through an API is being passed to the browser, and it ends the form context.
Yeah. So anyway, there's to
Yeah.
me it qualified as a ghost story. This is a legend at this point because I don't know that it really happened.
Yeah, and that sounds really because all you're doing is doing a create update tokens, right? To
Yes,
yeah, and
but
that seems odd to me. Yeah.
but behind the scenes, I mean, when you do that thing, it's got to be talking to the browser because the cookie ends up on the browser. So anyway, of course, it could be coding error. I've done that before too. So I'll figure it out and I'll report back. Okay. We've made our hour. Thanks for joining us for Low Code Campfire and welcoming in the new year with us. In just a moment, I'm going to turn off the recording. You're welcome to hang around for Afterglow and we'll continue the discussion a little bit more. But we will be back here again in 1 week for another episode. Thanks.